welcome to a new episode 51 of the KewCast. I'm John, joined again by my good friend Eddie. How are you doing?
Not good, John.
Not good?
No wine, no donuts. What am I to do?
Set a precedent. We need donuts and wine from now on.
How about yourself? What's
I'm
going
good.
on?
I'm a little tired from traveling. I'm about to jump on a plane again tomorrow
Are
to
you
go to
really?
Miami for that Racket X, but
All right. Yep.
that is not a complaint.
But you're back from Texas.
Back from Texas. It was a week-long trip to Texas. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we've got a good show, Eddie. So we're going to talk about my trip to Texas and, kind of some things I did there, including the competition. We got a lot of paddles of the week this week. We've got a backlog that we had to kind of dig through today.
I was not expecting that.
On the court. Right. There were some boxes that I hadn't opened in a few weeks. So we got the Engage Pursuit Pro Innovations. They're new ones coming out. And then also, I've had these for a while, but we haven't busted them out yet. But the Pursuit Pro 1 is now available in a hybrid shape and a wide body shape. So we tested both the 16 and a 14 millimeter. And those today. Also, Chorus Pickleball has some birthday paddles coming up, which they're calling basically their Preludes, which are either prototypes or kind of formulations that they might be releasing into future iterations of paddles. They're giving away some paddles for their birthday, which is today. So happy birthday to Chorus Pickleball. 1 year old.
It feels like it's been a lot longer.
Maybe 2 years. It must be 2 years. He started.
I don't think so.
I mean, he was going. So, yeah, when I saw him at Nationals 2 years ago, he handed me the first iteration of the
Shapeshifter?
Shapeshifter, right.
Right.
So
That went by quick either way.
it went by quick. But in pickleball years, I mean, that's
What's the ratio of pickleball years to?
I think it's like a dog year.
Is it
I'd
7?
say 7
7
years.
to 1?
Right. So he's at a ripe old age in Chorus. Teenager, I should say. Gear of the week, we've got some Gearbox socks, gear socks, some Bodhi Dry Grips. Also, Yobow sent some of their conditioning, warm-up / injury prevention things, which we'll chat about. New segment this week. I don't know if it'll be a regular segment, but I'd like to do like a book club sort of thing where we discuss a book and we announce it one week and talk about, it the next week. Give our viewers some time to read it if they're interested and leave some comments in terms of what they found.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Yeah, the most, eye-opening part of the book.
It's been a while since I read a book. But
Well, thanks to Audible, you don't have to read anymore, right? So Pickleball Mindset is the one
I like that one. I
touch on
actually
today.
have that one.
Right. Then Q&A. Good old Q&A.
I love it.
Eddie, I didn't get a chance to ask you how your week has been because I just got back from a week-long trip to Dallas. How's things
Well,
in
not
Eddie's
to
world?
get too far in the weeds, but as you know, I'm a federal employee, and so it's been a bit of a wild roller coaster ride lately. So just trying to ride that out, so to speak, and get through it. But pickleball is the best medicine.
That's exactly. Not an enviable position that you're in right now.
Not at the moment,
but yeah, glad you have pickleball. Got some good friends.
Yep.
Myself included.
Great community. Love it.
Excellent. All right, good sir.
Let's jump in.
Let's move on. Yeah. So first, latest news. I wanted to announce that Babolat has increased the percentage off for the Johnkew code.
Yay.
So you can use it on the pickleball shoes. So the Jet Mock pickleball shoes for 20% off, and also clearly the paddles. Right. So I don't think that it's applicable to the court shoes that are tennis related, so the Jet Mock 3s. But I did confirm that the Jet Mock pickleball shoes are exactly the same as the Jet Mock 3s, just in a different colorway. So the yellow-blue for...
What about the SFX? Those should be
That's
good,
coming.
right?
That's coming, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the specs on those. Do you know anything about those?
No, I'm currently wearing the older version, or the current version, I should say, and those are great shoes, along with the Jet Mock pickleball.
Okay. What's the deal with the original SFX shoes?
What I liked about them was the wide toe box.
Okay. So it's a wider version, basically.
Exactly. Lightweight.
Cool. But yeah, that 20% will also apply to the SFX Evo pickleball shoe.
You know what? I'm starting to dig the yellow color. When I
like
got it out of the box, I'm like, I don't have that exuberant personality that's needed to wear a shoe like this. But either I've changed or I'm getting used to the shoe.
I actually like them better than the bright orange ones. And I had the bright orange ones for a while, and I didn't mind them, but I never really warmed up to the color. And every time I wore them on the court, people were like, "Oh my God, my eyes are searing out of my head." But I've yet to get any like outrageous comments about these yellow shoes.
They really nailed it. I mean, good ventilation, lightweight, enough stability. I think it's a good formula.
Great shoes. I've always loved the Jet Mach 3s, so I'm glad they have a pickleball version of it now. What else? Yeah, well, let's jump into my experience at the Texas Open.
You've been gone a long time.
Yeah. So originally, the whole point of this trip was I wanted to go down, find an excuse to go visit Zane Navratil in Austin. He and I had been chatting since I came on the Dink, a few weeks ago, a couple months ago now. And we wanted to shoot some content. So when the PPA announced the dates of the Texas Open, I was like, all right, I can fly to Dallas, go visit my sister and nephews, and then drive down to Austin and see Zane. So that's exactly what I did. So I got into Dallas on Tuesday of last week, and then Eric Flatland and I competed in the men's 4.5, 50 to 60 division, and spent the rest of the week at the tournament, and then drove to Austin and with my sister and nephews, and then drove to Austin on Monday, drove back Tuesday night, and flew out of DFW on Wednesday morning. So great trip. I mean, busy trip, very productive. I feel good about spending that much time away because I did get a lot done. But in terms of the tournament, so like I said, Eric and I, 4.5 men's doubles, we won our first match in
Good.
2. Yeah, and they were
Double elimination?
Games to 11, double elimination, first to win 2 games. We were down like 8-0 in the first game of that first match, and then we came back and won. I think it was like 11-9, and then won the second one pretty handily. Great guys. I forget their names, but they were really good sports.
So were you guys just warming up, or did you see something in your opponents that you exploited? What was it that got you back into that first game?
I think it was just we had the yips at the beginning. We were both playing tight, you know, and weren't playing up to our potential. And then I feel like I played, about like I normally do on a rec game for the rest of that match. That changed in the second match. So we played a couple of just wicked bangers, man. These guys, one in particular, he had the craziest drives I've ever seen. I mean, one out of every 10 would go like over the back fence. That's how hard he was hitting them. But the others are like laser beams going an inch over the net and going in, dipping in. Clearly a tennis player adapted to pickleball. And I have no excuses for a power paddle because he was playing with the Selkirk Lux.
I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's a thing, right?
Yeah,
like Jack Sock played with the Lux, and I've seen some amateurs who really can just get a lot of juice out of the Lux. I can't, but this guy did. Man, that's probably the hardest hitting drives I've experienced. So it threw us off our game. It was very windy. They experienced the wind too, but it is better to if you can get away with it, drive rather than try to drop in the wind. I was trying to slow down the game and got a couple of points at the beginning. I think we were up 2-0, and then they came back and won 11-2, 11-2.
Oh, my.
Yeah. They just steamrolled us, and it just dominated. It hurt. It was like a tough pill to swallow because when you get dominated like that with like super aggressive, they were so nice. They would apologize if they hit us, which happened frequently. And they weren't like, rude people or loud, but just really good tennis players. So, that was that. Then we were off our game, and we went to the third match and lost that one again. So 1-2 is our record there. Yeah. So
and how do you feel about it?
I clearly didn't play to my potential, but that's okay. It was a learning experience. And the way I look at it, my duper stayed exactly the same.
Okay, well, it
was 4-2 going in. It went up to like 4-4 after the first match, and then it dropped down to 4-2 after those last 2 matches. So my reasoning is if I can play that crappy overall on average, and that's a 4-2, then I'm doing better because I know that I have a higher ceiling than that. Of course, everybody's feeling theirs during tournaments. Some people handle it better than others. But that's why I wanted to talk about pickleball mindset today, because clearly my mental game needs to improve along with, drilling and everything else.
So on your road to 4.5, you're not in reverse.
Mm-hmm, right.
So that's good.
I'm coasting at 4.2, just like I've been for the past 18 months. Right.
Are there things in your conversations with Scott that you like consciously pulled on or tried to at the match?
Yeah. I was focusing on having a game plan for when I'm serving for the serve, third shot, and fifth shot, and then receiving for the return of serve, and then the fourth shot. And yeah, I think I should have been more adaptable. I was trying to kind of stick to the script when the script wasn't working, and then when my mental game, when I got frazzled, it just kind of fell apart. But yeah, I mean, it came up with a topic I wanted to discuss with Zane, right? So how to defeat bangers, because I thought I was beyond that in my pickleball game, because that's everybody's initial hurdle in pickleball at 3.0 to 4.0. How do you defeat those bangers, which are really prevalent in that division? And then people start realizing, well, that doesn't work as much. You don't get as many free points, so they work on their soft game around 4.0 to 4.5. But then there are these 4.5 level players who are at a different level with their
So not to
drives.
belabor it, and if you don't want to necessarily get into it, we don't have to, but was it that you were out of position to receive drives, or were you blocking poorly, or what was it about the handling of the bangers that was giving you trouble?
Everything.
Okay. That's
But
easy.
the most important thing, which I didn't even realize as it was happening, was I was not swinging through my return of serves, and it was dropping short, and they were just killing us. Like some that bounced high in the midcourt, and they would
Gotcha.
just come in like
Attack.
Attack. And I didn't even piece it together that that's what it was going on. And going into the wind, I wasn't hitting it as hard, because you're stiff. And going with the wind on our back, I was choking too much because I didn't want to hit it out.
That for me is more difficult. I'd much rather play into the wind, just swing away.
Usually I would too, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that was kind of that. And then, I was out of position when they were kind of coming in, moving as they were hitting their thirds, and just it was a disaster.
Well, as you say, it's a learning experience. But everything I've seen of you is amazing drive defense. I mean, you have that backhand punch that is typically very effective against a shot like that.
Yeah.
Unless somebody's stretching you out.
With that stretch, right. So Zane gave me some really good pointers, and probably the most effective one was move through your return of serve and just go for it. Like, it's in the budget to go a couple, 3 inches out on a couple of your returns. But I was doing that with you today. Normally you have this wicked drive on your third, and that was affecting your ability to really whack away on those thirds. Because my reasoning was I'd like to hit the lofty thirds to give me time to get to the kitchen and get set. But if you get a running start and you run
Lofty
through
seconds?
the ball,
Or returns?
lofty return of serve, right? But if you run through the ball,
Yeah, I noticed that today.
yeah, and even short hop it sometimes, then that gives you a head start to the kitchen. It gets on your opponents quicker. If it's deeper, then that's great too. And they don't have time to really set their feet and really pound away.
Your shots
at it.
were coming so fast today with that tailwind, especially.
Yeah. So that's particularly effective, like you said, in a tailwind. Mm-hmm. So learning experience, and got some good content with Zane. So overall, a positive experience. Now, otherwise, I sat there for the rest of the tournament and enjoyed some exceptional pro pickleball. I actually got to sit at grandstand and commentate. So they invited me to do that, and it was originally with Thomas Wilson, and I've always loved Thomas and Vivian as kind of two of the best, nicest players, ambassadors of how to be classy in pickleball, right? And now my perception of Thomas is even, that much. I like him that much more because he's just a likable guy. And immediately, I walked up, I was like, whoa, you're commentating? I didn't know that you're going to be here. And he was like, hey, what's your name? And immediately hit it off, struck up a conversation. He's good in the booth. He's got a future career, in commentating for sure. But he's going through these medical problems, and we actually got to commentate on a women's doubles match with Vivian. So I got to hear some insider information from Thomas on Vivian's workout routine. She apparently is just lifts heavy. She's a strength trainer. You can tell from her physique, right? He's like, yeah, she's wearing baggy clothes, but she is jacked. It's like she can squat like 300 pounds easily, you know? So, yeah, that was really cool to sit next to Thomas. And then Thomas commentated for a couple games. I was there for a couple hours, maybe 3 hours commentating. And then Dylan Campini came. She's a collegiate pro. And she's a fantastic commentator too, and just funny. Got me loosened up, you know, in the booth. I was you know, listening back to it, and before I went in, I saw Dave and Adam, and went up to them. I was like, "Hey guys, they've got me on grandstand commentating. Can you give me a crash course?" And Dave was so nice. He's like, "Hey, yeah, we heard your comment." And he's like, okay, here's some tips. But one of the tips, he gave me like a whole laundry list. But one of the tips, he's like, really kind of make your voice very kind of, first of all, louder than you expect to talk, than you normally would talk. And also emphasize words more, you know, enunciate well. But also, you know, when you listen to yourself back, it's going to sound like you were bored unless you really kind of ham it up. And I was like, I do a podcast. I know how to do this, you know. And I went back and listened to myself, and he's exactly right. Like I was speaking kind of like I'm speaking now, but it did not come across as being like professional at the commentating level. I think some of it turned out good, and kudos to Dylan for kind of loosening me up and getting me laughing. She was hilarious, but it was a lot of fun. I'm not intending on doing this or anything or going this direction, but man, if I had the opportunity, I took it. I'm so glad I did, and I saw some of the best pickleball in my life on grandstand court.
So did you have some thoughts in mind ahead of time as to things you might try to say or you know, one-liners or whatever? Or did you just go in there and just wing it?
No, I mean, I winged it in terms of like, I didn't have any canned expressions or anything like that. But you know, I told them when they asked me, I'm like, well, you know, I'm a paddle reviewer, so maybe if I'm sitting next to somebody else who's a pro or who can commentate on the play at a more professional level than me, then I can talk about the gear, right? That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Like, so-and-so's playing with this paddle, and, you know, it's got a higher firepower level than their opponents and all that sort of thing. And there was a little bit of that, but it's kind of impossible. I wanted to talk with each of the pros before and even get their weight set up, and I did a little bit of that, but, you know, they come on court and they're warming up. I don't want to interrupt them, so I didn't get to do much of that. But I did ask Hayden Patrick when he showed up earlier than the others, so I walked up to him and I was like, hey, so just wanted to talk about your paddle before we commentate here. And he's back to the Tour Dynasty, so he's not playing with the C45 anymore. Asked him why, and he said that he just prefers that elongated shape. He loved the response and performance of the C45, but that hybrid shape, you know, he couldn't get it dialed in time for the tournaments, so he went back to the Tour Dynasty. He's looking forward to the C45 coming out in the Dynasty elongated shape. But he also told me how he weighted it up, and those things are beefy to start with, right? Yep. Stock. But he adds lead, he said, to the handle and the neck, so underneath his grip and up to the neck, and he gets it up to around 9 ounces static, he said. And I'm pretty sure he's playing with the 14 because the 16 is already above 9 ounces stock, right? So it had to be the 14 he was playing with. The 14 starts at 8.2 ounces and 126 swing weight. So, you know, if he adds nearly an ounce of weight to that, yes, a lot of it's in the handle below the balance point, but it's still going to add a little bit of swing weight to it. So I imagine he's above 130 swing weight or at 130 swing weight, which is crazy given his, you know, he's just a little guy, but man, he's got those crazy wrists, but he's so wicked fast on the court with a 130 swing weight paddle.
Can we talk about that C45 for a second?
Sure.
So you and I both play with it, and I think we both share the opinion that what we were experiencing, particularly in sort of acoustics and everything, was different than what we had seen on YouTube and on television in the weeks prior to launch. Having seen more of them in the wild, there seems to be variability in that sort of, you know, that dull, deep-throated sound that we initially heard but didn't experience directly. Are you seeing any trends or patterns in sort of what people are seeing and feeling on the C45s?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I've heard of break-in, but it's breaking in like the apes pulse and less like a core crushed paddle. I don't think any of them are core crushed yet, and I've heard no reports of that. But the tone gets bassier as it breaks in. And I think what's going on are those 2 channels of foam in the outside are loosening up. I don't know if it's the same thing happening like with the apes where the foam is escaping the carbon fiber tubes, or it's just loosening up in there and causing a bassier tone. But I do know that, adding weight itself to a paddle changes its tone. And I actually saw Chris and Isaac talking about Chris's new weight setup on the C45 is literally putting 0.5 gram per inch tungsten tape all the way from the bottom of the handle all the way across the top. It's like 20-something inches.
Oh, it's
That's how Paris Todd
right.
leds hers
Interesting.
up. And it's still only like 118 swing weight.
Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, it changed the tone itself, putting that weight on it. And I've experienced that too. So some of the tone difference you hear in the sound is caused from modifications, and other is break-in. But like I said, no evidence of core crushing yet.
All right.
And they're not getting hotter. They're just kind of loosening up and feeling better.
Anything else from Texas?
Yeah, so just one last thing to wrap up on the commentating. So I can honestly say this is the best point I've ever seen in pickleball. Especially sitting courtside watching it. But I've gone back and watched it since. It's on YouTube. I'll link to it in the description. But the match was the girlies, so Anna Bright, Rachel Rohrabacher against Tina Pisnik and Kate Fahey. And this was on grandstand court. And the point where Anna's serving at 8-9 in the first game, you've got to go watch it. It is outstanding. I counted the number of hits, the number of times the ball was struck, 95, and there were maybe 2 dinks in there. The rest were speed ups, blocks, resets, more speed ups. It was like Kate and Tina were on the defensive most of that time. They made some of the most incredible saves and resets I've ever seen in my life, and then turned the tables, and then Rachel and Anna were on the defensive, and it went back and forth like 6 times, and finally Rachel wins it with a double-handed backhand down the middle. I mean, that was bananas, and everybody on grandstand court, and it was packed, by the way, and standing room only, just erupted, and overpowered like center court noise. It was the craziest point I've ever seen in my life.
And what did you have to say about it at the time?
I thought I was
the floor is lava.
The floor is lava. And I thought she had a chocolate chip cookie, but it was oatmeal raisin. I thought I was like talking and just like expressing myself, so much. And then I went back and listened. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was a really good point.
Great job. Amazing.
Thankfully, Dylan was there to lighten the mood a little bit. But yeah, that was so much fun.
That's cool,
what
John.
a pleasure to watch those 4 athletes just go at each other. Oh my God, it was crazy.
Well, what an amazing experience for you to be able to do something like that. That's pretty cool. What an honor.
Yeah, thank you to the PPA for doing that. And there's no affiliation, obviously, with me and the PPA. They just, brought me on and asked me to do it. And, it was an honor. Good times, Eddie.
Would you do it again?
I would do it again.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on.
Imagine if the 2 of us did it now.
Yes, you and I. Get the KewCast crew.
Exactly.
You and I, and maybe we could even sit in with the big boys on center court.
All right.
That's a goal. Paddles of the week. Let's move on.
POTW.
Yes. We got a few engages to get through here. I got a few of these guys. All right. Let's start with the innovation. I think we can talk about these. I don't think there's an embargo. So the innovation are coming out in just a couple of weeks. So we have a 14 and a 16, and this is the Pursuit Pro 1 innovation. Both of these are elongated shapes, and what I could gather from all the kind of the jargon in the description of the paddles is that they're basically a weighted up Pro 1. You know how and different shape, obviously. So they're going back to their more rectangular shape. The Pro 1s had that arrow curve top. And there's a lot of talk about weighting it in different spots. I think they added weight to lower the balance point. or maybe it was to make it head heavy. I forget which one, but regardless, they're experimenting with perimeter weighting. Otherwise, it's as far as I know, the large cell polypropylene black core, same as their other Pro models. And I don't know what they're using. I haven't x-rayed these yet to weight it up, whether or not it's, bands of carbon fiber, extra strips here and there, or they're using the putty stuffed into the side, or extra foam. And I don't know if the foam goes all the way around the perimeter. In the past, we've seen they kind of stop near the top with the foam, and that's led to some issues with dead spots near the top. But yeah, and otherwise it's the same. This raw carbon fiber, and it's it's not standard thicknesses for
weird
Engage.
Weird choices.
So it's a 12.7 millimeter thickness, similar to what PaddleTech's doing, and then a 15.2. So more or less a 15 and a 13 millimeter. Oh, looking at the lights here, I can see, you see those ridges right at 9 and 3? Looks like maybe they added just literally strips of lead tape under the edge guard.
Interesting. I can't see it from here.
Yeah, if you hold it in the right light, you can see it. I see it on the 14, but not on the 16.
No, like right there?
Yep.
Yep.
So I wonder if it's just lead tape. Anyhow, they do play different, and they play different from their original throwbacks before the Pro 1 line was introduced. I would kind of characterize the difference in feel between these and the original Pro 1s, and even the newer shapes in the Pro 1s. These feel a little heavier and denser. Otherwise, they have the same power pop profile to me. So big power and big swings, but a more muted pop profile. Good spin, everything else. What are your initial impressions, Eddie?
Yep, I'm definitely on the heavier side. Of the two, I think I actually prefer the thicker one.
Yeah.
Just for overall, I guess, forgiveness and balance. I felt this one was a little too, twisty.
Okay.
Twist weight low.
Right.
Sweet spot was definitely brought on the heavier one there, the 16 or the 15. But overall, as a evolution of what we've seen before, I think it's a solid paddle.
You looked at the prices, right?
That one's not on their website.
Okay.
The other ones are at $259. I would guess it's somewhere in that range.
I'm pretty sure it's the same. It will be the same. Yeah, they're not out yet, but I think it's $260. Yeah, I agree with what you said. I really was hoping that they'd improve the handles. I can feel the exposed polymer in the 16.
Yeah, it's pretty sharp.
Can you feel it in the 14 too?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then you can feel like it's the wooden pallets, which I don't mind. I like the firmness on the ridges, octagonal ridges for the wood, but when you combine that with the soft, squishy side,
it's that transition right here.
Yeah, it just makes it sharp. Yeah, so it doesn't feel like a high quality handle. I also, kudos to them for not using a shiny black edge guard for the 12.7 13 millimeter one. That's an improvement. I don't think they did the same for their Pursuit Pro hybrid and Widebody, but we'll talk about those in a second. I did still feel dead spots near the top compared to like a fully thermoformed paddle. So as far as I know, these are Gen 1 paddles, not thermoformed, but they're using, the spicier of the polypropylenes, the ones that hit closer to like the PaddleTech. And yeah, I don't know, like I said, where the edge foam goes. We'll give an update. I'll get these x-rayed and figure that out. But it still feels to me like you're having an issue with a deader part near the
drives me crazy. I hit a really nice drive at you. You make a nice block on it. I take a couple steps towards the ball and reach forward a little bit. It hits that top section and like just 2 inches off the face.
Dribbles out into the net. Right. And yeah, as you said before, that target is not the center of the sweet spot. The sweet spot's actually, I was hitting it about here.
When are we going to get rid of the target?
Yeah. Give us a new design Engage.
The other side of the paddle's great. I love the clean look. I think it looks sharp. Nice. It's very stealthy looking. Then you turn it over and it's that engaged bullseye.
Yeah. I mean, it's
somebody's a terrible shot. I mean,
it's an iconic image at this point for Engage, but maybe change it up, make it smaller, put it somewhere else, right? And yeah, I do like this side, like you said. Other thoughts on this? I mean, talked about the handle. I mean, I do feel like overall the sweet spots on these are larger than the Pro ones before them and the original shapes of Engage paddles. I think they've done some good with the perimeter weighting, whatever they're doing to add weight to certain areas of this is helping with the sweet spot, but it's still not at the level of a Gen 2 or nowhere close to like the new YOLAs, the Pro 4s, something like that.
What do you think of the shape?
I mean, it's aesthetically not very pleasing, but I think the shape plays well. You know, if this was thermoformed, I think it would have a big sweet spot. I think it does add a little weight, you know, the square corners, you know, they could do a little bit more rounding to get the static weight down. Oh, and you mentioned you like the 16 better. I do in ways, but I'd say overall the 14 is my preferred one, which is not usual for me. I usually like the 16s better. I should say 15 for this and 13 for this. But I feel like that black core is soft enough that I'm getting enough dwell with the 13. It doesn't feel like a board. And I think with some weight to widen out the sweet spot a bit and put a little weight, there's a little bit more room for weight on this. You know, the question is, if you weight it up, is it going to be the same swing weight? I think you can manipulate the placement of the tungsten to get the balance point down even lower and make it feel not so head heavy on the 14. So this is more like a blank slate, but I did have a better time with this. And like I said, the profile of the firepower is man, when you really swing through and with a big serve or a drive or an overhead, you really get a lot of power. I put this up with the firepower of like
Paddle
close
Tech?
to the Paddle Tech. It's a good comparison, like close to top tier power, but the pop is much more muted on these than the Paddle Tech 12.7, right? For example, maybe closer to the Paddle Tech 14.7, 12.2, 14. I forget what the decimal points are, but yeah, less muted, less pop, more power in these profiles, which this 13 millimeter sort of fixed a little bit. It felt a little more balanced to me. I was able to get a little bit more pop. Not quite as much power, but I kind of liked where it landed better overall in the firepower balance than the 16.
So who is this for, John? If you're balancing this versus a YOLA Gen 4 or an Apes X,
right,
something along those lines, who would pick this over that?
I don't know.
Or Vapor Power maybe?
Yeah. I mean, that's a question, right? Is there a place for Gen 1 technology and the elite price categories for paddles, you know? And arguably, no. You know, for $260, you can pay $20 more for a YOLA Pro 4. It's a little lighter. It feels better for most people. I mean, this hardcore Engage fans, you know, who are coming from previous Engage paddles might adapt to this better. It's not as less of a change. It's an iterative improvement over their previous paddles. So in that regard, that's a win. But I do feel like, if I'm being honest, this feels like an old technology in a new package that should be offered at much cheaper prices. Yeah.
Plenty of people do love Engage, though, so I'd be interested to hear from them as to why.
Yeah. But I do have high hopes for Engage. You know, I had a good conversation with the owner late last year, and I think they're taking the company in the right direction, and they've got some good ideas. So I think what we're seeing now is the result of R&D from 6 months to a year ago. What will be coming later, I think, is going to be less iterative and more kind of, you know, something.
I will say whatever they did with the weight distribution on this paddle is effective. It does work.
Yeah. Yeah. So take that principle, apply it to some new paddles with some better technology.
All right.
And I also like that they're offering new shapes. So we have the Pursuit Pro ones, which were previously elongated with the aero curve top, and now they have the aero curve top, but in a hybrid shape. So
very familiar look and feel. Everything about this is just kind of comforting.
Yeah.
If that's a word you could use in pickleball.
Right. I mean, if the weight and the hand speed of the other Engages are too much for you, then this is a very valid option. This one felt quick in the hands, even the 16 millimeter. So this one comes in the 6.0, which is 16, and and the 14 millimeter. So just the Pro one.
You're putting this in the all court category?
Yeah, all court leaning power.
Okay.
It has the same firepower profile in terms of more power than pop, but overall, I'd say this feels hollower. It's not as weighty, so you're not getting as much firepower in total with fuller swings. But when you do hit a dead center of the sweet spot, it goes, with the full swing. Like I was getting some pretty heavy serves. I was on the receiving end of some heavy drives from you. I don't like the glossy edge guard on the 14 millimeter. I wish they'd do away with that. I feel like I don't know, maybe it's soft enough that it's not going to crack or break, but it's going to scuff up a lot more than the mat. And I still feel dead spots at the top of these.
Same. I was just going to mention that.
Yeah. And exposed polymer nail. Yeah. It's not as prevalent on the 14, but you can still feel it. I think they cover the polymer. It's not totally exposed, but it's like a softer cloth, so you can still push it in and feel makes the edges sharp, which I don't like. And then they have wide bodies.
Wide body to me felt completely different than the hybrid.
How'd you feel it as being different?
We talked about boingosity last week, and it definitely felt boingier.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So in what regard?
More trampoline feeling.
Okay. With shorter swings, fuller swings?
More full swings, I would say.
Interesting. Maybe you were finding the sweet spot better on this. I didn't feel that way.
I definitely felt enhanced sweet spot on these guys.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I could agree with you in a sense that the wider sweet spot allows you to find it easier on these and feel that power, but there's a hot spot on the Pursuit Pro 1s, the ones we just looked at, the hybrid shapes, as well as the other ones we were looking at before, where if you hit that, it fires off. And yeah, I was able to find that a little
more of an
easier
area on this paddle.
Yeah, less of a spot.
Mm-hmm.
More of a boingosity area. All right.
Only our viewers that will know what we're talking about.
Can't say I love the shape, the aesthetic look of the shape or the graphics. I would prefer a longer handle on this for sure. I still feel the dead spot at the top, not as pronounced on this as the others, because it kind of this wider sweet spot I feel like makes up for the dead spots.
We're going to be talking about another paddle in a bit, but this is kind of the polar opposite with just a gigantic face area, and it just feels like you're pushing a lot of air. And it was windy outside today, but man, I felt like I was just overcoming a lot of aerodynamic.
That's a good fan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, short handle, big face. I mean, you have a lot of square footage there.
Yeah, true. I was able to get two hands on it, but it wasn't comfortable.
It's tough. So if I was to critique the shape, I'd say make it a little more aerodynamic, add a little bit more curves, and definitely make the handle a little longer. I like the boing feel of the three paddles we played with today, or the three models. That's my preferred.
Yeah, I think there's promise in the wide body shape for Engage. So keep going down that path. I like where they're going.
Right on.
All righty, let's move on to the Chorus Preludes. So they're birthday paddles.
So many options.
Do you have yours with you?
Yeah, I've got this Super Court Nightstriker.
Uh-huh.
And I've got the Saved by the Bell edition from the 90s. The fresh Super Court.
So Matt's
real...
He came up to me.
My friend.
So there was a chorus event. I forgot to mention the chorus event in my Dallas recap, but we went to the Pickler, and Matt had refreshments for us and brought a few of us out there. Man, I missed so much on the recap of Dallas. So shout out to Lewis with Pickleball Pursuit, and Justin of Pickleball Etc., his co-host. We all stayed together in an Airbnb, and also Lewis's wife and good friend Louie. All were just exceptional people. I had such a good time.
Was Braden not with you there?
Braden was not, but I saw him in Austin.
Okay.
Yes. So really good people. Great to hang out with them. But anyway, it was us at the course event, and Matt came up. He's like, I know Eddie loves the gradient so much that I made sure to put in our gradient paddle.
Oh, man. This one's got like 8 gradients on it.
Even I can see That one is a loud paddle. It definitely has an 80s vibe.
90s, I'd say.
90s, early 90s? All right.
Yeah.
There we go. So it's fresh.
I couldn't even play with
sure.
this one, John. It just was so off-putting.
And I've got the Fire HX Furia and the Shapeshifter 6K HX. Now, the whole purpose of these is not to introduce new paddles. These are not going to be released as production paddles. He's giving these paddles away for the birthday celebration. But some of these are kind of prototypes from the past that didn't quite work out. And some of them are, elements that will be incorporated into future production paddles. So we don't know exactly what's going to be incorporated, what's going to be ditched, but I do know what's going to be ditched. All these decorative weaves, nobody really cared for those much, and those are not going to be in future production models.
Yeah, this one's got almost a triangular weave.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting fancy with the triaxial stuff, but, there is no real advantage to those. So unless you like the aesthetics, then that's that. Let's talk about the Shapeshifter 6K first. So the main difference in this is the surface cloth is not the 18K, so the really big checkerboard look, but it's the 6K, and it's, as far as I know, unique in the paddle world. So things are usually 3K, and the K means 1,000, and 3 refers to 3,000 carbon fiber filaments in each toe or each band, right? And that's woven over and under each other. So this is 6K, so 6,000 filaments in the toes. And you can see that you're actually, if you hold it up to the light in the right way.
Essentially a tighter basket weave.
Well, a little bit wider of a band. It's about, looks like 6 by 3K, actually. And you can see it's twill design, and the bands are just a little bit wider than your traditional 3K, right? So this was Matt's.
I was comparing it to the 18K.
Oh,
actually, yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So Matt's purpose for looking for this is to kind of capture that 18K plushness in a fiber that's easier to work with, because the 18K is one of the most expensive fibers, and it's just a pain in the butt at the factory because they have to weave it by hand, and there's a lot of waste that goes along with it, because if they don't get it just right, they have to scrap it and do it again. And the 6K is easier to work with. So otherwise, it's the same layup. So you have CCF, so 2 layers of carbon fiber. The middle layer is unidirectional, and then the bottom layer of unidirectional fiberglass. Same as what they've been doing for all of the shapeshifters. And this is the HX, so the hybrid shape. What are your thoughts on this paddle?
To clarify, it's just the surface layer that's 6K. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I would say that the objective was achieved. Dwell time.
Yeah.
It felt like it was there. Control.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it feels very similar to the 18K HX shape and the Shapeshifter. And honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference at all. So it's plush and, with softer shots.
That's called the Shapeshifter 6K.
Yeah.
It felt shapeshiftery.
Yeah, for sure.
Same.
And with softer shots like dinks and blocks, it performs more like a control paddle. But with heavier shots, it's in the all-court category. So I like that profile. That's what I loved about the original Shapeshifter that I mained for most of last year. And it's present in this. Now,
Go ahead.
Any more to say on the Shapeshifter?
No, I was just going to say this Nightstriker is very similar in play characteristics. I would say maybe a little stiffer, a little poppier.
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure what this weave is. It's not quite the same.
I think that's CFC.
Okay.
With fiberglass and metal rather on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I felt a big difference in that. So you and I were kind of going back and forth today. And to me, that feels a lot poppier and much stiffer than.
Yeah. But it's still got a little bit of that dwell.
Yeah. It's certainly in between the Shapeshifter and the Fire.
Yeah. And that's a good looking paddle right there.
I do like the colorways on that.
A Nightstriker. That's kind of a cool name.
Yeah.
Dig it.
So hope to see more of the Nightstriker.
Now, I did not play with the Furia.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Oh, shoot.
But you've got that loaded up with weight.
Yeah, it definitely needs weight. So this is the Fire, which has been delisted, right? And he has no intentions on re-releasing the Fire as something else. But I think some of the components of these iterations of the Fire will go into his next release that he's calling the Phoenix. So the Phoenix is going to be his new power paddle. And much like the original Fire, it definitely needs some weight. So I added, I don't know, it's probably 12 grams total of tungsten to at 9 and 3, and again on the neck. So this is not the traditional layup of the Fire. So it doesn't have that top layer of fiberglass like the Fire did. So this is CFC, similar to the layup but it's unidirectional. So unidirectional carbon fiber on top, 90-degree unidirectional fiberglass in the middle, and again, 0-degree unidirectional carbon fiber on the bottom. Wide cell polypropylene. Now, I forgot to mention the Shapeshifter narrow cell, 6 millimeter width on the polypropylene cells, 10 millimeter width on the polypropylene cells for the Fire, which is how it has traditionally been done for both the Fire and the Shapeshifter. So I think taking the fiberglass off the top layer helped the feel of this paddle tremendously. Like, it doesn't have that wicked stiff feel. I get more dwell. It sinks into that wide cell polypropylene more, and it's not too poppy. This doesn't feel like a paddle that it can't control. It doesn't feel like it's going to match up firepower level-wise with the top paddles right now after the delisting of the Mod and the Gearbox Pro Power Elongated. So the YOLA 4s and even the PaddleTech Bantams, I feel like this comes in slightly below the Bantams in terms of firepower. But I love the performance enhancement of taking that top layer of fiberglass off. Now, the layup's different too. Underneath that fiberglass on the original Fires were 2 layers of woven 3K cloth. So it was like, it's kind of a schizophrenic paddle, right? Super stiff top layer and 2 soft bottom layers. But the result was something that I didn't care for the feel of. This one I like a lot. Like, I could see playing with this one and really liking it. Now, an interesting thing that I noticed when playing with these in Dallas versus here in Denver or Boulder is I much preferred this Fire HX Furia. This was my favorite paddle in Dallas. Here it still felt a little too stiff, and I actually preferred overall the Supercourt of these 3. And that wasn't my impression in Dallas. It just goes to show again that the environment, humidity, temperature can play a big role in how a paddle plays. So, I mean, in lower climate, lower altitudes, more humidity, more heat, this does it for me. Up here in the mountains, this one does it for me. So, yeah.
So I never really embraced the Fire paddles. They felt very jarring to me.
Yeah.
So you're saying that with this, it's potentially been eliminated.
Well, much better, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I think this combination of surface layup with the wide cell polypropylene core, that does it for me.
Is the white part here functional, or is that just decorative?
I think it's just decorative.
Okay.
3D print.
Gotcha.
I do like that look along the bottom.
All right.
Yeah, so good stuff on the way from Matt. I think, like I said, elements of this Fire, iteration of the Fire, will probably go into the Phoenix.
John, it was your birthday recently, so happy birthday.
Well, thank you, Eddie. There you go. This is a beautiful paddle. I know it's your favorite, too, so it means a lot.
Need some therapy after that.
We are not done with paddles, Eddie.
No, we're not. The best is yet to come.
So I've had these sitting in the box. I haven't had a chance to open them in weeks. They sent me to them literally like 2 months ago. And, I knew what was coming, and I thought these would be just, oh, that's cute, kind of trainer paddles on the court. Kind of gimmick. Well, I actually saw Chris and Isa talk about these, and they were duly impressed also.
Just looking at them without having touched them, it just seems completely ridiculous.
Yeah. But I actually thoroughly enjoyed playing with these.
So fun.
It's not anywhere close to a trainer paddle.
Nope.
You can, it's not a misnomer. The slaps hard. It's a head heavy paddle. And when you get a piece of that sweet spot, which is not hard to find,
no,
it really slaps.
It's great. I mean, if you were to look at the percentage of sweet spot to the overall paddle size, this has got to be up there among the best.
Yeah, for sure. Handles feel great.
It's amazing.
Feels like a
fun.
fully molded handle. I think they're thermoformed. It's a 12K carbon. It's got some grit. I mean, I was getting wicked spin.
You were hitting the snot out of some balls
some
today.
serves were going, and then like the drives just felt right at the perfect launch angle.
Yeah,
like I could play with this in a tournament, and the weakness is clearly at the kitchen with touch, and but our opponents today were speeding it up, and I was countering just fine with this.
I personally don't think touch is even a problem with this paddle. I think if you struggle with finding the sweet spot on a big paddle, you're going to struggle with this even more.
Right.
But if you're a fairly advanced player and finding the sweet spot's not difficult, you can extract some crazy performance out of this paddle, and surprisingly so.
It's elongated, it's compared to the 11.624 Vapor. So, I have a tendency to hit high on the paddle, and that's why I don't care for the engages. I tend to hit that dead spot more often than not. So I think if you have that same tendency to hit high in the paddle, these suit your game better than they would for somebody who's used to a wide body paddle and they hit more in the center. Because once you hit down here, you can definitely feel a drop off in the sweet spot, because the twist weights can't be more than like a 5.5 or something, right? And that's pretty high swing weight for these. Well, maybe not, because there's so much less. I didn't measure it. Could be. I mean, it feels maybe teens for the swing weight, maybe low 20s.
I would say mid to high teens.
Mid to high teens.
Yeah,
okay.
117.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, there's less real estate down here for off-center shots, but I generally tend to hit up. So I had played a game with this and really had a good time. I didn't play with the 14. I played with the 16. I don't think I'd like the 14 as much, because the 16 gives you a little more pocketing and dwell time.
You need a little bit of that weight behind the ball too, and the 16 gives that to you.
What'd you think overall of these?
So much fun. I think I would probably struggle in some firefights, just because you don't have a lot of time necessarily to find the sweet spot on engagements like that. Right. But serves, drives, so much fun. Even dinks, I think, when you have time to get your paddle into position. Okay. These can be very effective.
Super spinny too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this has Will Chang written all over it, so Pickleball Will.
Does it? Okay.
He loves playing with that, like the PKKOL. Remember that paddle, which is more similar to like a trainer paddle than this. But that's kind of what I was thinking this would play like, and I like that one too. But it was very much like a boutique paddle, like you'd never consider playing with that in a tournament or competitive situation. Whereas this, the dimensions are there where you can actually play competitively with it.
You don't realize, like, aerodynamic resistance, how much that can play a factor. And this has none.
It's true.
There's just no air holding this thing back. Compared to a wide body, it is night and day.
Two.
You are going to notice.
It's a huge difference.
I mean, the cutouts are ridiculous, but this is actually a very effective way of beating that aerodynamic resistance. You're going to get some extra MPH on your swing speed.
I mean, do I think these paddles are going to be a hugely popular hit with mass market? No. But I do think that there'll be a fair number of people who could play well with these and might actually prefer this shape over a more standard shape.
I think if you come from a racquetball background in particular, that shape's going to be very familiar, and you're going to be used to hitting that exact same sweet spot.
Yeah, I think racket sports background, racquetball or tennis.
Yeah.
You're going to love the feel of this.
Okay. Happy birthday to me. So we are even Steven.
Wait a second. I'm getting a raw end of the deal here.
Right on.
Okay. Anything else for paddles of the week, Eddie?
Let's move on to some gear.
Yes, sir.
Some new stuff.
Yeah. Gearbox sent me some socks, which I thought were
real game
cool.
changers.
They were game changers. Pretty cool looking. So they have black, white, and then these kind of, is this blue?
It's
pink?
Blue.
Okay. With paddle designs. The white and black ones don't.
It's a baby blue.
I kind of got a kick out of these socks. Like I will probably wear these blue ones. And I was wearing the white ones today while playing, and they feel great,
John, you played great today. I'm going to chalk it up to the socks.
Game changers. But, I mean, if you have played with Adidas socks, they're very similar. They're thinner, but they have a little more padding in the sole of the sock. And they're pretty tight, which I need with my narrow feet around the band, the stretchy band around the center of the foot. It's pretty tight. I enjoyed playing with them.
All right.
They're pretty high quality socks. I don't know what the price is, but if you're a Gearbox fan and you like their logo, then there's an option for you. Let's move on to Bodhi Dry Grips. So these are relatively new-ish from Bodhi. I think he came out with them a few months ago to complement his classic grips, which are wet grips, right? So they have a wetter feel, and these are dry. Eddie, you actually like the Yonex dry grips. I think those are your preferred ones, right?
Those are my go-tos, and
Yeah.
these are actually really close to those.
Yeah.
I like kind of that, dry, but it's kind of a chalky feel is how I would describe it. And these have that, which I really enjoy.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of the dry grips. I much prefer the wetter feeling grips. But, I put these on today and was able to play fine with it and recognize that they're good grips. And to me, they feel exactly like the springiness, sponginess, thinness of the wet grips, but clearly, like you said, kind of almost like a powder feel to them, right? So if that's what you like and that was what was holding you back from getting the original Bodhi grips, then these are good options. I also think he improved the tape bands.
Oh, yeah.
That was one thing. I mean, it's such a nitpicky thing. I hesitate to even bring it up, but with the originals, the tape bands that you put around the neck were pretty thick, and they kind of crinkled a little more on the edges.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, and this white I think looks great. The white on white, and the others were black. But yeah, solid grips, and as always, you can use our code for.
They feel less cushy than the original Bodhi wet grips.
You think they feel less cushy?
Which I would prefer it
You like
that way.
better.
Yeah.
To me, they feel similar. They're, some people classify them as like medium thickness. I'm more like thin. It's at the thinner but softer feel, similar to the thinness of the Yonex. Maybe not quite that thin, but a little spongier. And yeah,
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, always good stuff from Bodhi. And lastly, for Gear of the Week, I wanted to talk about some Yobow products. They sent me this.
What does Yobow mean?
I don't know. Maybe it's, what does YOLO mean? You only live once?
Yeah.
You only...
It's similar to, like in Korean, you would say, if you were referring to your spouse, Yobow.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's
Maybe.
related to this at all.
Maybe it has a Korean background. We'll see. I'll ask. But this is the Backpack Plus. And you can get all these in here for $180. So what's in it? So it has a massage gun, first of all. And I remember when we did our favorite gear of the year, you brought out a massage gun, and man, it looked almost identical to this one.
I'd have a hard time distinguishing the two.
Right. So smallish, very low profile, which is great because you can stick this in the bag with all the other stuff. And does the job, right? Nothing super fancy, but it's got different attachments, and this is the one I like to use, kind of the flat one. It doesn't have the rubberized tip, so it's easier to slide across your clothing. And cool thing about this is if you scan any of these QR codes, there's a whole series of programs you can warm up with and actually do resistance training with all these things. And they have an 8-minute warm up. And this is not pickleball specific. This is for any athletes. And their goal with this was just to kind of help with injury prevention, to do kind of quick warm ups. So I went through the 8-minute warm up today on the court when you showed up, and I have to say I was more impressed than I thought. And initially I was like, okay, $180 for all these. You could probably definitely buy each of these individually from different cheaper sources and get your price down to closer to $100 or maybe even below that. But all of these products, all of these individual components are really good quality. I can tell from the stitching on them, et cetera. So there are resistance bands. This is a medium. There's also a black one that has more resistance and a different colored one that has lighter resistance. There's a ball that you warm up your forearms and shoulders with. This guy.
It lights up too.
Yeah. Which I find the coordination on my left hand is much less on these. It's harder to get it going. Anyways, that's part of the 8-minute routine. And then you have this band. You've got some stepping blocks, which are rubber wedges that you put on the court and stretch out your Achilles tendons, your calves, and you combine it with the stretchy band around your knees to do some squats and get your activate your quads as well as your calves. So these, I mean, you mentioned something that you have issues with your Achilles, and you said that was appealing to you, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if I don't keep my Achilles stretched out, particularly in the early mornings,
Right.
life is so much harder. So great to be limber there.
And then with this around your knees, you also do like lunges, sideways lunges, and forward and backward lunges, and then you use the stretchy band to work your shoulders, stretch your shoulders and that sort of thing. So doing this for 8 minutes, I will say that I felt significantly better than my traditional warm-up routine, which I've adopted through various, mobility exercises. I stretch my wrists. I do like a bear walk where I'm walking on all fours and stretching out my calves and Achilles. I do like a frog thing where I'm kind of shuffling side to side. I do the side lunges. I do forward lunges, and I skip and do the karaoke walk and everything. That gets me warmed up pretty well, but something about, and you could do this with any band clearly, but the band in particular keeps that tension on your muscles longer. They're constantly tensed up. So by the time that 8 minutes was over, you and I started playing, I didn't feel like the normal stiffness I usually feel. So this is something that if you're willing to invest $180, then it's nice to have everything together.
Did you use the massage gun as well?
Yeah. And that's the first thing you use. You just kind of run it over.
Okay. That size percussion gun is great to bring to tournaments when you don't have the space or the weight carrying capacity for a huge Theragun or whatever. It's just nice to have that small tool with you.
Yeah. I mean, there's the bag with everything in it. I mean, the rubber blocks are probably the heaviest or add significant weight to this, and it's not something that's super, super light, But I would definitely keep it in my car if I didn't have enough space in my backpack or it's too heavy. And it is tournament worthy. So good stuff from Yobow. I enjoyed this.
Very cool. A much neglected part of folks' pickleball routine, including my own. So many days I just show up and start banging away.
Right. And how
probably not the best.
Not the best. How much was your massage gun?
I'll have to look that up. It's from a company called Roll Recovery. It's out here in Boulder, and it's a very high quality machine.
Yeah.
But similar attachments, similar kinds of things. So it may be a similar manufacturer for all I know.
I feel like you run around $80 to $100 by themselves.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I enjoyed all of these, and I will continue using them. All right, Eddie.
First book club.
New segment. I wanted to kind of throw this out there as, possibly something we can continue, not every podcast, but talk about some books and engage our listeners to also read the same books, and we can, meet in a week and talk about some key points. But as I mentioned earlier in the podcast with my trip to Dallas and my underperformance in competition, clearly I need to work on my mental game, which I've known, and I've been consistently doing mindfulness meditation. It brings us to Pickleball Mindset. So this is a very popular book that Dane Gingrich and Jill Martin wrote, published it last year, and I've been meaning to read it. So I took the opportunity while I was in Texas to read this book. And I think, I want to put it out there for you to read. Don't you have it already?
Mm-hmm.
Have you read it?
I've started it.
Okay. Maybe you can chime in on some key points here too, but I want to readdress this next week and open it up to our viewers and listeners to leave comments on what the most compelling parts of this book were, what were some of the concepts that really struck home with them, and we'll do the same next week. So I'll cover one of those concepts this week that really stuck out to me as being a key takeaway moment for the book. And that was, I forget which chapter it was, but it was basically overcoming the fear mindset in competition settings. And then I realized that, it's less about me just being tight and feeling quote unquote pressure, and more about there's a fear element there. And they did a thought experiment where, like, what causes you the most anxiety when you're under pressure situations on the pickleball court? And the more I thought about it, the more it was me letting myself down, right? Like putting all of this work to drill and improve my technique and get the help of professionals and all of this, and then me just blowing it, in a competition setting. And that to me is my biggest fear. And I felt that when I was competing in Dallas, right? And once we were down and started getting down, it was hard to dig myself out of that hole. So one concept that they brought up, I think it was Dane's section, is the same concept that I've heard a lot in mindfulness meditation, as well as Stoicism. But all of these kind of converge on this one thought, and that is that there's no real pressure. Is not an objective thing. We all feel it, but it's only in our thoughts, right? Now, it's easier said than done not to think yourself into making pressure, but it's not something that the air doesn't change and it's pressure. It's just like you're feeling pressure because your thoughts are giving power to that pressure, right? And if you're able to focus on the moment, bring yourself out of your head and focus on the moment, you're able to overcome that pressure. The pressure's not there. You're able to perform better. Now, there are people that spend years and years on this one thing to get better at it. So it's definitely not easy. But I mean, just the whole concept that your imagined shortcomings only have the power that you allow it to have, that you give to it with this thought process, providing fuel for the emotions that come out of the anxiety. So what Dane's solution to that was to basically reframe this as an opportunity to, employ all of your training and everything you've worked hard doing over the countless reps on the pickleball court up to now. And now you have an opportunity to actualize all that training and in competition setting, and to look at your opponents less as like adversaries and more as like, oh yeah, the better they do raises my game as well, because I'm able to showcase and allow all the training to come to fruition. So I thought that was a meaningful part of the book for me.
There's a lot. I'm going on memory here. It's been a while since I've tapped into the book. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot in there that really resonated with me around just the extrapolation that we all go through in our thought processes. And that usually ties into goal setting and those types of concepts, where it's so easy to go down the wrong path of saying, well, I'm going to be a 5-0 player. And when something doesn't work out for you in even one shot that leads to one game and then one match,
right,
it's easy to get so off track very easily, when appropriate goal setting, I think, is a really important concept for people to hold on to, mm-hmm, to, as you said, stay in the moment. One bad shot is just one bad shot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And getting beyond that to just focus on the next shot is probably a better way to go about it than, well, that shot just ruined this entire match, and now I'm screwed.
Right. Right. And that's, it doesn't have to be fear, but it's the mindset that taking you out of the moment and the thought process, oh, am I going to be a choke artist in this situation? When in fact, everybody has ebbs and flows and everybody makes mistakes, even the pros, and the best of the pros are able to leave that behind them immediately.
Mm-hmm.
The goldfish brain where, okay, sucks, I dinked that into the net. Something in, what's the tennis mindset book? The Inner Game of Tennis?
Inner Game of Tennis.
Yeah. Something that resonated in that, which is a similar concept to this, is imagine, try to reframe your inner dialogue into what a referee would be thinking about your game. So take it out of your ego and make it a neutral third party. That's a little bit of more kind of mental juggling, but that's helped me here and there, and I keep going away from it, but I got to come back to it. And that's, if a referee sees a simple, stupid mistake at the 4.5 level, he or she is going to be like, everybody does that. They're going to, it doesn't matter in the long run, that their game is either going to improve or it's not. And on to the next point, right? The referee isn't thinking, 10 points later about that unforced error, right? It's erased from their memory. There's no reason to go back to it.
Yesterday, I was testing out some different paddles, and I hit 2 terrible drives into the net. And on my third drive, I'm thinking, man, I got to hit this twice as good now to make up for those other 2. And that one went into the net too. So
pressure's building, right?
It does, man. It gets to you.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway,
So we'll all read up over the next week and
Yeah.
maybe leave some comments as to kind of your key takeaways from the book.
Exactly.
All
Love
right.
it. We can have a book club. Let's move on to Q&A. We're running long here, Eddie. Did you pull any questions?
Yeah, one's from Mike Alam. This is one that you found, John.
Okay.
I'm new to this is a great. I love this question. I'm new to pickleball, but highly competitive. Do you feel it's best to start with a control paddle and learn and get better before upgrading, or learn with a power paddle and learn to control the power as you get better? I think that's a really nice juxtaposition.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What do you think?
I think James Ignatowicz touched on this too in one of his podcasts, and he said that people should just learn how to play with the power paddle from the beginning, and you get better at the soft game, the touch, the control with a power paddle, and then you have the firepower capacity needed to put away balls, right? Now, different people think differently about that. And yeah, I think it's a great question too, and thank you to Mike for emailing me about that. I've changed in my perspective on this, and as paddles have also changed, we've seen this arms race in the paddles for the past year and a half, but now it's finally starting to stabilize, and we know what the top tier power paddles are, and they're not crazy anymore. And if you take a look at the JOOLA Pro 4s and some of the other power paddles, the 11624 has a little less power, but all of them now have a much better sweet spot and forgiveness than the power paddles of last year had. So essentially you're capturing two things in the same paddle that used to be only in opposing paddles, right? So good forgiveness and power. So in that regard, I feel like we're at the point now where most people can pick up a JOOLA Perseus IV or 11624 Vapor Power, and a few others in that category, and play pretty well with it, but still not lose too much control. That being said, there's not a one-size-fits-all paddle for everybody, and there are certain people who rely more heavily on consistent resets, touch, soft game than others, and I don't care about the power game. In that case, definitely I think sticking with the all-court or control paddle would be better for that particular situation. But I'm leaning a little more towards, okay, the paddles are now at the point where almost anybody can play with the power paddle and play pretty well with it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, John. Focus on forgiveness. Over time, as you get to be better and better, you're going to be able to find that sweet spot easier and easier, but give yourself a little grace at the beginning to be able to find that sweet spot, and that's what a forgiving paddle gives to you. So whether it's a power paddle or an all-court paddle,
right,
find the most forgiving one, find the power paddle with a lot of forgiveness, and then you'll be all set on your path.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you were to ask this question late 2023, when the Gearbox Pro Power Elongated
don't
came
pick
out,
that one.
Don't go with the Pro Power Elongated if you're a beginner.
Nope.
I mean, a lot of people did and gave it up because that sweet spot's hard to find. But if you can have a big sweet spot and good power and good, decent touch, yeah, I think we're there.
What about elongated versus a more traditional paddle?
I still think that most people would be better off with a wide body paddle, all things being equal. If you have a tennis background and you love head-heavy rackets and paddles, then not the wide body. But I think that side-to-side forgiveness of a wide body paddle, given the longer handle, which you get the same amount of leverage, and the firepower now of the wide bodies is just as powerful as the elongated. So that's not an issue anymore. Then I think, most people would be improved playing with a wide body or at least a hybrid.
Yeah. Once again, focus on forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
I think of one of my favorites now, the Pickleball Apes. Maybe not the E,
right,
but the Pulse V, Pulse X, I think are great choices.
Yeah, for sure. That's not to say that elongated paddles are bad by any means, but I do think it takes a higher level of accuracy, and it's just nice to have a little bit of leeway with hitting off center.
Right. So Frank from the Texas Open asks, what's your one arrow in the quiver? Pretend we are playing identical opponents. That wouldn't be very fun. But which paddles would we use as the deciding factor? So I guess this boils down to what's our main right now and why do we pick it?
Or maybe there's more to it than that. So yeah, thanks, Frank, for coming up to me at the Texas Open and posing this question. I was like, oh, this is a good thought experiment. We're going to cover it on the pod. So yeah, I mean, in my mind, it's like, all right, if Eddie and John are playing Eddie and John on the other side of the court, all four of them gets to choose their secret weapon. What would those weapons look like for each person, and why would they choose them? And it wouldn't necessarily, in my mind, be what we're currently maining, because that's kind of like
interesting take.
Yeah, that's kind of like that's what I want to use. So the 11624 Vapor Power is what I want to use against the most general opponents, right? You know, that fits my play style right now. But what if you and I are playing you and I?
Okay,
is there a better option?
I see. All right.
Yeah.
You want to go first?
Let's hear your thoughts first.
So if I'm playing myself, because John, you don't have any weaknesses, but I do.
Sure.
I suck at right side recovery from a third shot. So a third shot coming to my right side.
Okay.
Suck at that. So if you ever play against me, that's your go-to shot. So maybe I don't pick, an extreme power paddle if I'm playing myself.
Right.
I'm going to lean more towards an all court or something that gives me all court characteristics.
Okay.
So that's an interesting take on that. As far as, boy, John, you're so tough.
Like playing against me.
Yeah.
I mean, not. So here's my thoughts. You can come back. We'll come back to like how you perceive a best paddle against me is, but I know my weakness is much more than. No, I shouldn't say more than anybody else, but I tend to obsess over my weaknesses, and it's something that actually a pickleball mindset covers too. I shouldn't be doing that, but I think I would go maybe with even a higher power paddle than my 11624. That's kind of at the bottom of the power category. I might bump up to like a YOLA Perseus IV, for example, or maybe the Scorpius IV. That's a little bit more forgiving. To have a little bit of extra firepower, but still enough forgiveness. And the reason is clearly one of my weaknesses that I didn't even know I thought I had to overcome is against bangers, right? So being able to hit heavy drives and good putaways could give me advantage against myself, not against you. You have a great fast game, and it might equalize my game with yours a little bit because you get those heavy, heavy drives on both sides, backhand and forehand.
I was thinking against you, I might want something on the poppier side of the spectrum because you do have good drives. They're coming fast. But if I can just use a little bit of power to block those and get you moving,
right?
I feel like I can get a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so your paddle against Eddie and John, your one quiver, one arrow in the quiver.
I like the Scorpius that you brought up. I like my Pulse V because it gives me that blocking option with some pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go YOLA Perseus Pro 4 14 millimeter.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's gonna drive some power.
Yeah, and with good pop also. So there you go.
All right.
Our one arrow.
That's pretty cool. Got time for another question or two?
Yes, sir.
This one's from Katie Potts. She's a frequent commenter on our page, and it's appreciated. She's had her eye on a Perseus 4, 14 millimeter.
Okay.
Very timely question. Before I pull the trigger, what's your opinion versus the Olympus? Been maining the Olympus since January, and the concern is swing weight being higher on the YOLA, and she'd like more pop, more spin, more power. Thoughts, please.
Okay. Is that true that the YOLA 14 is?
I was just going to ask about that because I don't know that that's necessarily true. From my recollection, the Olympus is pretty heavy on the swing weight scale.
I mean, it was low teens, I think, stock, maybe mid-teens.
I think say a little higher than, mid-teens at a minimum.
Okay. I feel like that's similar. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like it's very similar to the YOLA Perseus 4 14 millimeter. But yeah, let's assume they're exactly equal, right? Because the Spartus isn't light because it's filled with foam.
Right.
But I would say that the JOOLA Perseus IV 14 is much more forgiving than the Spartus. Spartus doesn't have a huge sweet spot. It has a hot spot for sure, and it drops off quick after that. You still get some response off of that hot spot, but I found it really hard at my level to really dial in the Spartus Olympus. And, I said so in the review as well. I think for higher level players, they can adapt to it more quickly and easily. But, there's also it has less firepower, even in the hot spot, than the JOOLA Perseus IV. And you're not getting as good of a sweet spot. So to me, it's the best of both worlds for the Perseus IV.
I've got nothing to add to that, John.
Okay.
It's perfectly said.
Yeah, good question.
All right, we got one more. This is from Eddie K., a really avid listener and contributor to the pod.
Yeah, he's a troublemaker.
So I've been not struggling, but very interested in exploring the concept around launch angle a lot. Because I feel the more I get into playing different paddles, the more I notice that there's different launch angles for different paddles. Mm-hmm. And preliminarily, I want to say a lot of that has to do with dwell time and plushness being related to that launch angle. What are your observations of that? And is it possible to make adjustments to sort of a paddle's innate launch angle capability?
That's a great question. And I think we can talk briefly about our initial impressions, but I want to open this up to some of our, more enthusiast-inspired listeners, engineers, to help us through the math of this, because I honestly don't have a beat on what exactly causes different launch angles off a paddle. I feel it, and my impressions, I haven't thought too much about it, but I feel like length and width play a role in that, as well as thickness of the paddle.
All right.
So I remember the first time I think I noticed it was on the Volley Mach 2 Forza, that review. And the 14 and 16 of that hit differently. And both of those hit differently in terms of launch angle than the other paddles I was used to, the more elongated ones. So what are your thoughts? Do you think wide body paddles hit at a higher angle or a lower angle than elongated?
Honestly, I've only again, preliminarily, anecdotally, seen trends with that dwell time and plushness.
Okay.
Not so much the dimensions of a paddle.
Which makes sense too, that dwell time would affect it because it's holding onto the ball a little bit longer. So if you have an open face, it's going to launch up higher, right? It's not, and grit also, if it slides, it's going to affect the launch angle versus sticks and returns. I think all of these components play a role. And I love the part of the question where can we manipulate the launch angle and tweak it to what we like in a paddle if it's not there already. And
there's a paddle I love, and I won't say what it is right now, but I love the way it feels. Mm-hmm. It's got a great balance of power and control, everything else. But I have to think too hard about the angle in which I'm hitting the ball.
Uh-huh. Right.
And I don't want to think about it. I have other things to think about on the court.
That's a great point. And you know what? This hits at the perfect angle for me. Like I hit some heavy drives and serves today. They went right where I wanted to, as 100%. Long as I hit the sweet spot. So maybe something about balance point may also play a role. But I don't know. I don't know what about this paddle is causing me to be more accurate than others.
All right. Well, we'll think about that more.
Okay.
I would love to hear if anybody has thoughts about why that would be.
Yes, sir.
All right. Eddie. Q&A complete.
I thought this was going to be a short episode. We say this a lot, but we went over an hour again. But it was good to get back in the studio with you. I know you've got to run back to the real job.
Yep. Lunch break's over.
Lunch break's over. But thanks so much, Eddie. Good times.
All right. See y'all.